which totally works since we're doing Earnest this month. Oh, it's the last day of the month. And we're open at the top, so it might be the end of the month, but it's not the end of our ability to learn and to know and to grow. And to grow into this teaching we call the science of mind. Thank you, Costa. We got some miracle people in this house, don't we? I mean, seeing Colleen up there, that was just like a week and a half ago or something? 10 days. 10 days. No, that's because you showed up. You showed up big time, that healing power. We put the prayer action on it. The practitioners got together, and look at what we did. We demonstrated a miracle of health and healing. We got Tony back. He's doing well. He's back fully operative. He's not back in the house yet, but we'll see him soon. And Rocky's doing good. Yes, yay. Right, yay. Rocky Rhodes. I mean, come on. What a name, huh? I love that. You know who Rocky is? Rocky's the donor. So we okay? Rocky's the donor. Yeah, he pulled through with flying colors too. So things are looking good. Open at the top. Here we go. Now, this was a thing that Dr. Holmes spoke a lot about. And interestingly, the idea of open at the top did not begin with so much about the movement and the teaching being open, although that is how we've interpreted it, and that has a lot to do with it. But really what he was talking about at the beginning was, see, this structure that became the Church of Religious Science, he wasn't that into having that kind of a structure. He started out with an institute. What he wanted to do was to teach people and give them a philosophy that they could take back, a method that they could take back to their own faith system and then let that enhance their experience of spirituality. But what happened is so many people enjoyed the message so much that they said, we really just want to hear you. And so thus a church kind of sprung up. And so when the church sprang up, he wanted the structure of the church to remain open. And so our structure was to be open at the top, but also our teaching is to be open at the top. And around the time this was all coming to place, they bought this building called the Institute, and it was on at the Institute. I mean, there was so much stuff going on. Here's the Institute. Show it to you again. And that's why I say it was really on at the Institute, because back in the day, magazines, and I'm talking about like 1918 through 25 through 1930 or so, even past then. But when Ernest got his start, magazines were to then what blogs are to us today. Anybody with a computer and a keyboard can start a blog. Well, anybody with a printer and some paper could start a magazine. And that's what they did. And so Ernest started this magazine. He started one called the Uplift magazine. And that later became the Science of Mind magazine, which for a short time was called Religious Science Monthly. But at the same time, he started this other magazine called the Quarterly Journal, Science, Religion, and Philosophy, because that's what he was so much about, science, religion, and philosophy. And he was hanging out with the big dogs in this kind of stuff. He was hanging out with professors from USC, from Caltech, from Stanford, from the University of London, University of Chicago, psychologists, and even a rabbi, a guy named Rabbi Tratner, who was very well versed in the Kabbalah. Dr. Holmes and he would sit around together and they would kick around the Kabbalah, and he was so into it that this Rabbi Ratner would allow Dr. Holmes to come and speak at his temple. So he was going all over the place doing these different talks at various theaters and synagogues and churches and really moving around and then selling this magazine all over the place, these quarterly scientific religious philosophy journals, and bringing in some really great thinkers, and got the attention of Christian Larson, who became one of the first editors of the Science of Mind magazine. And all of this was happening right after the crash in 29. So a lot of people were hurt. A lot of people were broken. A lot of people were in need of this teaching. Sound like a familiar time? When we have the same kind of stuff going on with the housing bubble and the burst in the economy and people needing to feel a sense of prosperity and abundance and possibility and know that there's a power within them that they can tap into to increase and enhance their lives. And that's what Dr. Holmes tapped into. And as a result of this, he put together this teaching that has become the science of mind. And one of the things that was very important for him to bring about was this idea of breaking the trust in a faith system that sometimes people thought was based in superstition or couldn't be completely understood in a heart space as well as a head space. See, he was bridging that gap, that long highway from head to heart. He was really working to bridge that through this teaching, and it actually has worked for us. I don't know for you guys, but for me, I mean, that's how it worked for me. I was able to find a way to tap into a space of faith. Like this weekend, went to USC, to the Faith Leadership Institute. It's at the Cecil Murray Center for Community Engagement. And 45 ministers from all over Southern California were invited to this workshop down in Long Beach for 4 days. And most of them are pretty hardcore, traditional, fundamentalist, evangelical, Pentecostal, apostolic, Church of God in Christ, Baptist, AME, United Church of Christ ministers, United Methodist Church ministers. It was a lot of, in the name of Jesus, Father, I ask for you and we give it to you in the name of Jesus. And I was able to go to that because of this teaching and really get down with these guys and understand what that faith was about, because this teaching is really based on the teachings of Jesus. Now, we don't necessarily go to he died on the cross for our sins, because we don't believe that we are damaged goods. We are part of the divine, that God doesn't make any mistakes. No, none of us are mistakes. But the way that Jesus lived his life and the example that he lived his life allows us to know and have a method for living our lives that enhances our lives. And if you think that the Science of Mind teaching does not have anything to do with Christianity, read the textbook. Half of it is called The Teachings of Jesus. And so what Dr. Holmes did was distill this teaching in a way that we can make it applicable in our lives on a daily basis. What he tried to do, what he said was that the religious science is shorn from dogmatism, freed from superstition, and open at the top for greater illumination, unbound and free. Unbound and free. And he was really onto something, hanging out with philosophers and scientists well before his time. He said the exact same thing, back up, no, not quite yet. Not yet. I'm going to get there, though. You're with me. You're with me. He said the same thing back in 1959. What I was going to say is that here he is hanging out with the guy that you just saw, George Wald. Yeah, let's go to him now. Go ahead. That's good. Hey, I will take him. George Wald was a biologist and activist. He won a Nobel Prize for something about retina research or something like that, the colors of your eyes. Anyway, he says that matter has reached the point of beginning to know itself. Man is a star's way of knowing about stars. Man is a star's way of knowing about stars. Brian Swims said something similar, a cosmologist. He said that man is the universe becoming conscious of itself. And these are the kind of people that Dr. Holmes was hanging out with. This is this guy back in 29 or 30 when he had just gotten out of college, and he would come over and hang out with Dr. Holmes, and they would talk about these philosophical and scientific and physical ideas, metaphysical ideas. And what was really interesting to me was this weekend, one of the ministers that I spoke with this weekend, a Reverend Beverly Bam Crawford. What's her name? Beverly Bam Crawford. 70 years old, powerhouse. Mom, I told her about you because she said she's 70 and she doesn't have a partner. And I said, my mom's 77. She's got Ellsworth. She's doing it. So we prayed on her. She said, your mother? And I said, my dad is 77 and 75, got married a couple years ago. He did? You mean I can find a partner? I sure can. You need to come pray for me. I said, okay. I walked over to her and gave her Science of Mind treatment and prayed on her, but I had to put my hands on her because that's how they do it over there, So I said, you are the divine and perfect God expressing his wholeness and as you, and there is the right and perfect partner moving into your life right now, pulling us forward into. And she was just like, whoa, that was a powerful prayer. There was no Jesus in that prayer. I said, Jesus made the declaration, made the claim on your life right now, and so it is. And she was like really satisfied then. So she wrote this book. Look at this, The Law of Faith, Quantum Reality. Quantum reality, a Bible-thumping, Jesus-loving, saved me on the cross, is now writing Science of Mind. There's a chapter in here, God and Science, the metaphysics of science and God. We have been on the cutting edge so long that people we're like Cutco knives. You know what I'm saying? We are still sharp. And people are now coming around to us. They're coming around to us and figuring out what we're doing. And one of the things that we have going on is we have this idea of the unlimited possibilities of good coming into our lives. That we live in an infinite, boundless universe. And one of the things that Dr. Holmes tapped into when he was studying and hanging out with these philosophers was the Greek philosophers. You know, he went to he met up with this one guy. Do I have his name? I think I had his name. Willett Harding. Yeah, Willett Harding was his name. And he was a teacher at USC. And Dr. Holmes was really enthused with this fella. And he says, I love what you're talking about. And Professor Harding said, well, then you should enroll in USC. You're still a young man. At the time, Dr. Holmes was still a young man. And Dr. Holmes says, no, I'm not much on that kind of learning, that academic learning. How about if I hire you as a tutor and I become a private student of yours? And he says, okay, that's great. Okay, good. So they went down there, and the first day, Dr. Holmes goes into the classroom, and this Harding, he gave him a stack of books like this. Dr. Holmes says, what's in those books? He says, have you read those books? I said, yeah, I've read all those books. Can you tell me? I mean, yeah, they wrote a lot of stuff, but can you tell me what they meant by what they wrote? He says, sure, I can tell him. Okay, then tell me what they meant. I'll read the book some other time. I'm not going to read all those books. I don't want to read all those books. I just want to know what they meant. And that's really important, because he was about what does it mean, not what does it say. What does your life mean? Not what are the conditions in your life saying to you. What do the conditions in your life mean? That's what's important. So he sat down with that guy and had these one-on-one conversations and understood what it meant. You know, when you're talking to somebody, I don't care about what your words are saying. I want to know what's in your heart. What do you mean? That's why Bam and I got along together down there, because I was listening to her heart and she was listening to my heart, and I got what it was that she meant, what she understood. And if we can do that with each other, we lift our lives up in a whole different way. And so that's what Dr. Holmes did with this guy. And then he said, this is pretty cool. So what I get from this is because some of it was Plato and Plotinus and all the great books of the Greeks and the ancient religions. And he says, oh, okay, so there's this absolute cause. Oh, I get it. Absolute cause. Infinite, boundless universe. I understand. There's patterns. There's perfect patterns to everything. So if I can use my consciousness to see the perfect pattern and call forth the absolute cause and say to that cause, bring that pattern into fruition in my life, boom, I'm on the way to healing myself and turning around conditions. He made these complex ideas really simple, and that's how he was able to fill places like the Wiltern Theater 2 times a day with 2,800 seats and standing room only, because he took this really complex stuff about things like the invisible being seen and made it not only visible for people, but understandable for people as well. He talked about the silent forces that were available to us. He talked about the emergent consciousness and how we're moving into a space of an intelligent universe that can respond to us, we can ask questions of it, and it can answer those questions as the conditions in our lives. See, that's what we get to do as religious scientists. We get to ask the questions of the universe and know that the answer is available to us, and then we can go out and act upon that answer, make the claim on our lives, and change the conditions in our lives. This is what it's all about. We're not just here to be entertained. I mean, I may say some funny stuff and you might laugh along the way, but really what you're here for is to make your life better. You're here to fall down and break your hip and 10 days later come walking in and singing. That's what you're here to do. This guy, Ward, he had another thing he said. He said, the trouble with most things that people want is that they get them. The trouble with most things people want is that we get them. We're thinking about stuff all the time. Patrick does this exercise where he asks people, Reverend Patrick, where he asks people to do a percentage on how many things how much they're thinking about what they want in life versus how much they're thinking about what they don't want in life. If your percentage of what you're thinking is over 50% what you don't want, check into the gap and figure out how to flip that equation so that you're spending over 50% of your time, as much as 70%, maybe even closer to 80% of your time, thinking about what you do want. Because the things that you get in your life, you'll get. The things you think about in your life, you will get. But will you want them? You can, because you have the ability to control your life. Did you get it? The things that you were thinking about in your life, the things that are prominent on your mind, you will get. But will you want them? If you don't, flip your thinking around. Think more about the things that you want. This is why we do affirmation and prayer and treatment. That's why we do spiritual practice and study, so that we can turn our mind and break the chain of negativity that we're on and go into a chain of positivity where we flip the switch and we turn our direction around on how we're thinking. And then we begin to see, if you're not, I always use the traffic example, but here's one. A friend of mine used to complain about graffiti all the time. He really hated graffiti. He was like, ugh, graffiti. This same friend didn't pay his parking tickets on a regular basis. And he got busted for not paying his parking tickets. And he had to do community service. And in community service, you got it. Yep. He had to go clean up graffiti. Right? But in the process of cleaning up graffiti, he found out that there was graffiti taggers and graffiti artists. And he became an advocate for graffiti artist space and helped to form a nonprofit group that led to that wall down at Venice where they can go and put the graffiti artists can put graffiti on the wall. See, it was something that he was seeing. Something he was seeing, and he got it in a way that he didn't necessarily think he wanted it. God will do that to you. It'll show up in a way that you're not expecting. You got to look for the blessing and the lesson. And he did, and it ended up flipping it around. So those are an example of how you can think about something, see something in your life, and bring that into your experience. It becomes magnetized to you because it's just light traveling anyway, and that light is attracted by something, and you're the attractor. So this is why Dr. Holmes developed this idea called treatment, so that we could have a method to help switch around how we think about things, how we can move our desires into manifestation by giving them attention, and that attention breeds conviction, and that conviction brings feeling, and then there's a movement in the universe that brings about our good. He says, treatment is for the purpose of changing one's own consciousness, not to change the attitude of God. See, God is always self-giving. God is always creating. That's all he can do. I mean, he's got a kind of boring job if you think about it. All he can do is create stuff all day long. The beautiful thing is he's got infinite power, infinite substance, infinite supply. So he can create whatever he wants to create. And we are co-creators in that. We get to have a choice as to how this goes about. And the way we go about it is by changing our consciousness, because God's already out there trying to create stuff, looking for ideas on what to create. Let me see here. I've got my Life and Times, and I've got my little icon that says book 227. I bet that's a page number. Oh, yeah. This is a great little book. This is Fenwick wrote this one. When Ernest was near the end, he was heartbroken over the loss of Hazel, and he just never really got back after that. And he said, Fenwick, I don't know if I'm going to be around much longer. We should write a book, because I don't want people getting it wrong. So he asked his brother to write it. And this is where he talks about treatment. He says, quiet the mind and definitely state that faith and understanding are present. This is why we do the gap. Quiet the mind. Quiet the mind. And with faith and understanding, know that there is a presence there. He says, mentally state and spiritually feel that a conscious and constructive presence pervades all life. This is how you do the treatment, folks. This is Foundation Digest style. Affirm that the Spirit wills to respond and that it does respond. Affirm. This is know it, claim it, accept it. That's mine. I'll take it. Affirm that the Spirit wills to respond and that it does respond. Sit quietly and believe. So now the part of the treatment begins. This is why we do the meditation. Part of the treatment begins by just sitting there and getting your ducks in a row, getting your brain in the right place, of a quiet receptivity. And then once you're there, now state your desire as simply as possible, using only such words as have a real meaning to you. We got some practitioners that can wax poetic. It sounds so good. You don't need to do all that stuff. If all you want to say is give it to me now, just say give it to me now. You don't even have those special words. If it means something to you, it means something to this attitude of God that is always giving. All right? Never try to, here he is, he says it right here. Never try to use other people's thought. You are alone with cause. See, when you're sitting in that quiet space, you're just right there with Spirit, all right? See to it that no denial of this thought enters your mind. And if the denial comes, and it will come sometimes, you'll do this treatment stuff and you say, I don't know if I believe that. Treat to believe it. It's like, I accept the willingness to believe that which I am saying right now, okay? As simple as you can, create a definite acceptance in the mind that you are being guided into paths of peace and abundance. Now, this is really interesting. Guided into paths of peace and abundance. Well, what if we're not praying for peace? You're always praying for peace because you want a consciousness that is clear. You want a space that is open and receptive. You want a peaceful continence so that there's no stuff, no wavy stuff in the way of your divine emanation coming forth through you, you see. And the abundance, you say, well, I'm not praying for abundance. Yes, you are. Whatever you want, you're praying for a lot of it. You want all the power of it, you know? You want like the lady who said she thought she wanted a car. When it really came down to it, all she really did is wanted to be able to get to work on time because her car was breaking down all the time and she was having trouble getting to work, and she just sat in that quiet space we were talking about and got down to the fact that I just want to get to work on time. 2 days later, somebody at her office moved out of their apartment, gave her the apartment. It was 3 blocks of work. She started walking to work. She didn't need a car at all. This is how this stuff happens sometimes. That's an abundance showing up for you, see? Feel a response in your thought. Feel that what you state is the truth about yourself. Affirm that you accept and believe and receive. That's treatment for you. That's how you do it. It's really simple. It's really simple. You could do it real fast, too. You just have to just get in that comfortable space and be open to receive. This is the other part about open at the top. Prepare yourself by doing affirmations and knowing and feeling the affirmation that you're giving yourself. And meditate on a regular basis so you can listen and contemplate. And there are 2 different things now. Listening is to hear that wisdom of the divine. Contemplating is to hold the idea and releasing it and getting it really firm in your mind. So when you release it into the law, it's ready to go and you are ready to shift. One of the guys that spoke this weekend was a guy named Raymond J. Jr. Powerful young man. Can't tell you all of his story because we don't have time for it. I'll tell it over time. But one of the things he talked about was how you have to do the work to get ready to do the work. He says, preparation puts a transformational opportunity in front of you. Preparation sets the stage for your life to be transformed. You know, you talk about people say, Kobe Bryant, he's a natural. You ever hear people talk about that? Kobe Bryant, he's a natural. A natural? He shoots 10,000 free throws a week, a day. That's not a natural. That's a skilled, prepared person who's transformed his life and put opportunity in front of him. You see, that's how that works. Dr. Martin Luther King, they say, oh, he was a natural at preaching. A natural, he flew 200 trips across the United States, doing 350 speeches a year for 11 years. That's how he got to be, I have a dream today. It wasn't that he just woke up one morning, he's a great speaker. Preparation transformed his opportunity and put it in front of all of us. If you prepare yourself, and that's what we talked about back in the treatment thing, prepare yourself, sit and feel the divine downloading into you. Prepare yourself for the transformational opportunity so you can say yes to your good and bring it into your life. Dr. Holmes says, look at this. I love this. Look at that. Look at that face. No wonder people were healed around him. He just looked happy. ABC. That should be CBS. What's wrong with that microphone? He says, how little we recognize the motivations that give rise to chains of thought. How little we recognize the motivations that give rise to chains of thought. What's he talking about there? Chains of thought. You think one thing and it leads to another, it leads to another, you know? Oh my goodness, they took so much out of my paycheck, all those taxes. Oh, I haven't paid my property taxes. My electric bill was awful high this month. I got a nick in my car. My dry cleaners was late. A chain of thoughts sends you down the road of negativity, you know? And we get hooked into that, and we don't even recognize that we're doing this with our thinking, you know? How we think about things can flip things around. How about I have a job, and wow, they took some money out, and my mother gets Social Security. I'm glad I put some money into the system. And, you know, how about flipping the switch on some of these things? It's so easy to do, but you have to consciously do it. And as you consciously do it, it gets easier and easier to do until it becomes automatic. And then the motivations that give rise to change of thought are the motivations that lead to more good in your life. We're talking about being prepared. Do your free throws and get to the end of the race. Here's how you get to the end of the race. By knowing that there is grace in the universe, that the God is a self-giving God who loves each and every one of its creations, so much so that it just pours all of it in. Peace and abundance. It's yours. It's yours. Get out of the way of blocking it with all the negativity. Be open at the top so you can receive this good. Because see, we think we know so much, and sometimes we just don't know anything. Dr. Holmes used to say this. He says, I used to think I knew, but now I must confess that the more I know, the more I know, the less. Right? Do it again. I used to think I knew, but now I must confess, the more I know, the less. Stop thinking you know so much. Open up. You know, I used to tell friends of mine who try to, in some of the earlier classes, you know, you want to get your good? Here, make a fist. And I'd hold out a $20 bill. Now, take this $20 bill. They couldn't do it, right? So I say, open your hand. Then I put out a 1, and I say, now take this 1. And they grab it. Don't do it the other way around. Do it the other way, right? You got to be open. You got to be open. Be as little children is what Jesus tells us, right? Be as little children. Be flexible, bendable, teachable. And then the sweet gifts of the presence comes into your life. Dr. Holmes finishes up here with, only as we remain thus open to growth do we avoid diminishment. Don't diminish yourself. We're not here to be diminished. We're here to expand and to evolve upward into a spiraling good in our lives. And anytime something feels like it's getting you down, remember that that's just setting you up for a really victory. You know, there's the blessing in the lesson. Remain open. Be like Dr. Holmes says when he said 1959 at Asilomar, remain open at the top. If you remain open at the top and know that there's more for you to receive in that state of positivity, in that state of openness, you will receive your good. And so it is. So that's why the affirmation is what it is. Now it makes sense to me, which is weird since I wrote it. Like the expanding universe of which I am a part, I am in all ways an ever-growing, deepening expression of spirit. And so it is. Mm-hmm. Nice.